Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
How's it going?
Are you on?
Oh, life is really wicked awesome. That's all. Going very well.
I love it.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Just getting everybody on.
Oh, yeah. What a good job. It's a fun task every week, huh?
I think that there's a way for me to change it. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, I think you can, if I remember correctly, you can actually add the people as a panelist on the setup software.
On the setup, yeah. I'm going to do that after this recording.
What's going on, guys?
What's up, Kim?
Just got out of bed.
What?
I was just kidding. I said I just got out of bed. Oh, that's funny.
All right. What's up, Brian?
Good morning from North Bend, Washington.
Yeah, it looks pretty out there.
Yeah, a little hot.
Brian, that's so funny. I spent so much time in North Bend. I love North Bend. I used to live in, I lived in Issaquah.
No, really?
Small world, man. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife owns a race here at the Jack and Jill Downhill Marathon that goes from Snoqualmie Pass to North Bend through the tunnel.
No kidding. That's super cool. I actually lived up at Snoqualmie Pass for a few years too, during my ski bum years.
Now, is that
That's
the
the
same
start
as
line.
Bend, Oregon, or is it different?
No, Bend, Oregon is south of about 500 miles. We're in actually east of Seattle in Washington.
Oh, you're in Washington. Yeah. Because that's how good I am at geography. You said Washington. My mind went to Oregon.
Okay. How's my reception? Can you guys hear me okay?
It's a little soft.
All right. I may have to see if I can find a. You would think that their Wi-Fi would be the most excellent in the world up here, 10 minutes from Google.
Elon's satellites aren't hitting you yet.
No. Is that any better?
Still a little, I mean, I think it's just the volume is soft. The connection's fine.
All right. I'll just be on pause then.
Got some people saying they're having trouble getting in.
What's the topic today's, guys? Just so I can come up with something.
We're going to be talking about expectations today.
Okay, that's easy.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah, I don't need to come up with it. It's just brutally honest.
Hey, so I've got to get somebody to the airport. I've got to get somebody to the airport, and I'll probably have to dip off early, but I saw how many people couldn't make it today, so I joined for this first 30 minutes or so.
Well, okay, I appreciate that. Yeah. So yeah, I'll get you on first.
Or
Right.
just somewhere in the first half hour is fine.
What's up, Dennis?
Hey, buddy, how are you?
And wicked awesome.
Good, excellent. We're a little light on panels. Everybody's traveling or somewhere.
Well, summertime, people have lives, and
Yeah.
Whoa,
of course, I don't
hold
have
on,
a
let's
life. So that's
calm
fine.
down. Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, I was gonna say not all of us now.
Well, some people, Kevin, you can't have a vacation till you're 35.
Come on now, we got a couple ski trips a year.
There you go. We still got a bunch of people logging in, so let's give it another minute or two before we start.
Walk inside this room, maybe you'll hear me better.
Mitch, so you were in Wallington, New Jersey, out of all towns in America, you chose
Right.
Wallington, New Jersey. What?
That's funny, huh? Yeah, well, we were doing it I do my Rockstar Real Estate Series classes, so we're trying to take them on the road now. And so
Yeah.
we did one up there, and it was great. But we're in the middle of meeting with the agents the day before, all my team's agents up there, and there was a flash flood. And then I got on the flash flood. I got video of it with one of the agents trying to get to his car. The water was up to his, almost up to his knees. And I took a video, put it on Facebook, and then I got NBC and ABC both reached out to me to use the tape, to use the video.
I saw that. So I lived in Wallington growing up from 11 years old on, went to high school there, and I lived on this main drag, Locust Ave, and that used to flood and turn into a river maybe once every 6 years.
Yeah, well, it did, and it was a river. I mean, it was a good 1 to 2 feet deep. It was deep.
That's
That was
awesome,
funny.
man. Oh.
So, all right, well, we got a few facts. Let's get rolling. So today's topic is expectations. Thanks everybody for coming, and we always have fun in these things. I did have to miss last week because I was in my favorite happy place of Fenway Park in baseball. But you'll get them on. Okay. So today's expectations. So how are we talking to our customers, and how are we setting the expectations for our customers, both buyers and sellers, when you're working with it? I'm going to start with Brian because he's in the woods somewhere. And so Brian, why don't you go ahead. So how do you set expectations? What's the conversations look like with your buyers and your sellers, especially with the market changing right now?
Thank you, Pete. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I think a great conversation to have right now, and I'm going to speak to maybe the buyer consultation expectations right now. I think sellers are a different topic with me usually, so I'll just kind of focus right now with most of the agents who are on here might be newer agents with buyers. We can talk about sellers too. It actually applies. So setting the expectations today sounds something like this with me. I believe that every client deserves the Nordstrom's treatment. I think if you can set the expectations that the client is about ready to go through a journey with you, that the journey you take them through is the best one you can take them through. And if you're frustrated, if you're an agent who's having a hard time, chances are your clients are going to be frustrated too. So what you need to do is you need to sit down and write out a little bit of a journey that you want every client to go through with you, so they have a good experience, because that's where referrals come from and repeat business, and you have a pipeline later to work on. So the expectations that I think are really important right now are, there's 10 of them. I'm only going to go through a couple of them, but the ones is that you need to be a ready, willing, and able buyer that a seller is willing to choose. And how that looks today is that buyers need to look like a seller's dream buyer. It's not about the price. It's going to be about how you set that buyer's offer up to be presented. So you walk through and you want to make sure that they're not just pre-qualified, they're pre-approved. Hopefully they're DU approved. They don't have anything holding them back, no lease, no long escrow if possible. They need to be very flexible. And if you let the buyer know that the seller is going to choose a buyer who's flexible with time, who's going to be flexible with the seller needs, who's not going to come in and demand a lot, the expectation is that your offer is going to get selected over some of the other ones if it's too regimented with a lot of contingencies and time frames and things. Now, if you can't help it, just make sure you do a good job. Also, you need to let your buyers know that the contract is written in such a way that the seller does not have to do any repairs for you. So if you're a buyer agent and you're working with buyers and you've got a nitpicky kind of a buyer, you need to let them know that, listen, the contract you presented is as is, at least in California. It's an as is purchase agreement, meaning the seller doesn't have to do anything for you if they select you. Be prepared for that. Be prepared for some things on your home inspection report that come back that are not going to be ideal. You know, that's when you have the strength of maybe a home protection plan behind that. And as you start to set the expectations, you also want to know that the buyers need to know that they're going to have some remorse. They might see the market declining. They might see interest rates going up. Having a little bit of buyer's remorse is very common right now. So buyer's remorse, how you handle that is you just tell them they're probably going to have it. You don't know when, but if they do have buyer's remorse, at least you set the stage for them. You predetermine that this could happen. And when buyer's remorse does happen, then they're going to go, wow, my agent you know, hey, Brian, you told us this could happen, and we discussed it, and we figured out, okay, the house is still worth it. We're still a 10, and everything that we talked about in our original expectation meeting, you know, it's there. So we talked about, right? Every time you set the expectation of something that you know from a previous transaction needs to be something that you put into this part of your consultation right now. It's very important that their wish list, like if you don't know your buyer's wish list, set the expectation that they're going to see the perfect home. And then what's going to happen is the two of them are going to go home and talk about it. What do they need to talk about? It was the perfect home. But usually couples do not agree on what it is the house needs to have until they see a few that are perfect. So if she needs a walk-in closet and he wants a 3-car garage and it has a 3-car garage, but it doesn't have a walk-in closet, she's going to be like, well, we need to go home and talk about this. As the agent, I need to know these things ahead of time so I don't show them a property that doesn't have what she wants and what he wants, because the expectation is I only need to show one house. One house should be perfect. But if they have to keep going home and thinking about it, then they're going to miss out on some opportunity. So this American dream versus the American nightmare experience is what I call this. I want all my clients to have the expectation that they're going to have the American dream experience. And when they do, they rave about you. When they're not having the American dream experience, then it's our job to make sure that we're guiding them through the best we can so it ends well for all of us, because not every escrow is closing right now. Not every escrow is staying together. Low appraisals, it could happen. I set that expectation up front. The more of the things that I share with my clients up front, when they happen, they're like, man, our agent told us this could happen. We were already prepared for this. And that's what you want to be able to do. Write a list of things that have happened in the past to you. If you're 20 years in the business, just write down who was your last 10 buyer and recreate that buyer's experience so you can deliver that buyer's experience in a consultation up front so every future buyer knows what the transaction should look like when it goes perfect.
Yeah, great stuff. I guess we're done. You covered pretty much everything. All right, let's go to my buddy up in because I think they're having a cold spell up in Pennsylvania, right, Craig? What's going on up there, buddy?
Yeah, no rain, right? Cold spell. Brian, I love what you just said. Make a list of the past experiences with the past 10 buyers. That's huge. I've got a Zoom meeting with about 30 of my team next week. And that's one of the things I'm going to do. Set up each one. That was huge. But there was something that came out over the past couple of days, and it actually re-triggered it in my mind. I use the words a lot. In the expectations that I'm working with everybody is taking them through the process, taking them out and making sure they don't fall in any black holes, that there aren't any unknowns, and that they have the timelines of what should take place. And every time we come up on a situation, you might have the husband or wife say, I'm not really sure about this house. 5 words, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. What it's doing is making them think deeper. We all hear it, but do we use it? Tell me more about that. The strongest 5 words. And again, it was funny, Craig Shad, that we all know. I use the words, he actually used it in an email that went out the other day. And I kind of like what it said. That's the difference between a top producer and a side hustler. Tell me more about that is going deep. Go deeper than just the surface. And you're going to understand the expectations that they meet. Our expectations may be different than what they're expecting. So I asked them what they want to do. What are the top 3 things? How do you like to be communicated? So if you're asking the questions, you're ultimately going to meet their expectations. That's all I'm doing. Before, we weren't even have a chance to ask questions because we were selling the house before it even got out, got a sign in the floor. So now we got to do some more, what I call Clouseau, looking for clues of how to make everybody rate the
Cool. Let's go to Jana. Jana's our first time on our panel with us. She is a major rock star. She's almost as good looking as me. Jana, so tell us, how are you talking to your customers right now? What are you talking about with expectations? You have buyers and sellers, market shifting. What's that conversation looking like?
So hi, everybody, and thank you for having me today. And So knowledge is key. So going deep, that's very important, and knowing your market. I feel like that you get a lot of hearsay and a lot of talk and a lot of different market, gossip that people go off of, and they think, oh, this is so bad and I'm going to hold back and wait. But if you really talk it through and know your market, especially Oklahoma, I always tell a lot of my clients, this is not to be anything negative towards California, but I say, we're not California, we're not Florida, we're not Arizona, we're Oklahoma. So we had very, reasonable prices to begin with. And, things have changed, but not just drastically like some of the other marketplaces. And honestly, now the interest rates are more normal than, they always have been. So when you hear, oh, these interest rates, well, that's what they've been in the past for a long history of time. So really just to let your clients know, comparing that to rental rates and what are you going to be a renter? You need to be a homeowner. You need to build equity. You need to look at, the values of your home and what it does every single year and what you're getting out of it. So if you educate them I try to talk to my clients and not a personal, oh, I have to have this, that, and the other. I talk to them as an investor. This is a life investment, and we need to talk it through, and we need to look at the numbers, and then we can go for the loves and the things that we like as far as we want to pull or the wants we need. But if you look at it from an investment standpoint, I think it's really important, and it gives them a different perspective.
Right, that's great. Yeah, it's funny you said interest rates. My first house I bought, 1983. I was obviously 4 years old. Was 14%, and when I got in the business in 2001, it was 8%. But we have a whole generation now who've never seen over 4%.
Spoiled.
So they're all freaking out right now. So it's interesting, right? Excuse me, Dennis. Let's how are you doing that with the 427 customers you deal with every week?
Doing good, buddy. Hi everyone. I'd like to focus a little bit on seller talk. So I dealt with the seller just before this call about a request for repairs, and then I dealt with the seller yesterday about pricing. So both in a $2.5 million range. Both of these properties happen to be. So the request for repairs came back at $50,000 for this one property up in Del Mar, which is a big number, right, for a request for repairs. So the talk track I had with my seller is basically, this market has turned quite a bit. So let me backtrack a little bit. So I went to a Mike Ferry event last week in Las Vegas for the full week, and there were some really good statistics I want to share with everybody. So if you have pen and paper, write some of these down. This is important, really important when you're talking to a seller. And I use these like a magician about half an hour ago. So on a typical market that we just came out of, about 8 to 9% of escrows canceled for various reasons. Financing, couldn't come to terms on requests for repairs, whatever. 8 to 9%. Anybody have a guess as what it is currently right now? 25%, exactly. 1 out of 4. So that's almost triple. Good guess. So that's almost, and these are 3,500 top agents in Las Vegas, and these are real statistics nationwide. So when I'm talking to my seller about a 50,000 requests for repairs, which most sellers would fall on their ass and be like, what the hell is this, right? Buyers are giving pushback right now, guys. So if you're dealing with listings, you have to know how to deal with your sellers. So I went to my seller and I said, hey, I went to this event last week with 3,500 top agents, and here's the stats. And I just went over them. 8 to 9 in a normal market, 25% right now. If we don't come to terms with this buyer who's ready to remove contingencies today, we're going back on the market, and we might get 200,000 less. And that's legit. And he's a sharp guy. He's like, I agree with you. So, we're going to make this deal happen. And knowing your statistics, people, is hugely important. If you don't have statistics or have anything to back you up, you're going to go in there talking to this person. They're going to be like, well, I don't agree with that. So, come up with the hard numbers. 1 out of 4 escrows are falling out right now. So, and a lot of them are just buyers just freaking out, being like, let me wait and see what the market happens. Right. Yeah. So that's really important. Just be educated. I mean, knowing your numbers, knowing your inventory, of course, is important. Knowing your numbers is hugely important. So, listen to Inman News. If anybody subscribes, if you're an agent doing deals, it's $150 a year, whatever. They come out with great articles every single day. Okay. You know, and they talk about market statistics. So you can just share that stuff with your sellers and buyers. Okay. Another good resource is Keeping Current Matters. I don't know if anybody uses that. Another one with really, really great statistics. So the big one that stuck out to me, which I just used, was the 25% falling out of escrow. That didn't scare them, but you know, it put things in perspective, right? When you come at them with a big number. So, and that's the truth. I'm doing the best job for my client, and I'm telling them, if this was my home, I would run with that number. So the other thing is we didn't just take the 50. We came back at about 35,000. We're going to negotiate it so we don't look desperate, right? So this is, you know, we're selling right now, people. We're salespeople, and we're selling buyers and sellers. Our main goal in any real estate transaction is to close a deal. And then our next goal is to represent our client in the best way, right? They both go hand in hand, but we're closing deals. So to close a deal, you have to be skilled in what you tell people. So yesterday I went on, we did a twilight photo shoot for another listing that's coming on the market. And, you know, the seller's a little nervous. You could see it in her eyes. And she was like, what's the market doing? Are we going to be able to get, you know, what we talked about 2 weeks ago for this listing? And I'm like, let's see what the sellers come up with. And one term I like to use is this, a little, and it kind of lightens the mood. I said, hey, the market right now is kind of like the music has stopped, but people are still dancing a little bit. But people are stopping to dance right now, and they're starting to realize the music stopped. So it's critical right now to price your property really aggressively so we get this thing sold. Otherwise, you could be costing yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 6 months. And that's the truth. Okay, so that's my seller talk track in a nutshell. Hopefully that helped everybody a little bit.
That's great. That's awesome stuff. Yeah, it's funny. When I speak, I'll tell you about my conversation yesterday with the customer too. It's I don't know if you remember in 08, we had the chasing the market.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was chasing the market, and I'm starting to see that happen now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Let's see, Randy. What's up, Randy?
What's up? What's up? So I'm going to continue with the seller topic too. So one is Brian and I actually just had a listing appointment that we went to together, that we listed a property. This is a referral, and it's basically an estate sale or probate sale. We're waiting for the court to approve a few things, but anyway, that's side story. However, what we looked at was a property that needs, you know, basically a full-on updating, but it's mortgageable. So there's several buyers that can potentially consider this property, right? So what we did was we educated a client on 3 different types of buyers that they might have. They might have the flipper, they might have the buy and hold investor, right, which will pay more than the flipper, and then they might have a end user that is not afraid to do the work themselves because maybe they have construction background. They'll pay the most, right? Because they're going to live in a property. They're not looking for a return. So we went through those scenarios. And then when we did the comps, and this is actually, we're in a better position now than we were in late June, trying to communicate values of our clients' properties. In June was very difficult to communicate that because there was no really new sold comps that you can use that started from June 1st, meaning being listed. So what I mean by that is if you looked at an MLS right now, probably in any city, I would venture to say, and maybe in most, is that you might find comps that closed in May that support a very, much higher value for the property that you're about to list. But then what's cool is if you actually start going into MLS and selecting listed, filtering it by when it was listed, right? So I put May 31st or May 30th, whatever, because I know that June is when the tide completely turned, right? That's when everything started turning, right? Because that's when the interest peak was. June 14th was the peak of interest rates. Everything started turning and it really hasn't gone back to a degree, right? So I tell my clients, it's like, look, we have to be really careful what comparables we're going to look at. So when I send these over, here's how I'm going to filter it out for you, right? Because the comps that you might have seen that closed in April and May are supporting a 80,000 price point if your house was renovated, right? This is a house that needs work. However, if you start looking at it from the way we look at it now, because we now have enough data, because if something is listed, let's say June 1st, there's a high probability it went into escrow, or some of them, and they actually closed by now. So now we're actually getting hard stats, right? We're not just calling pendings anymore like we had to in June and only look at actives. We actually have sold comps now from the shift in the market, right? So when I sent the comps via email later, I explained, like, here's how I filtered this. So these are everything that was listed May 31st on that is now active, pending, or closed, right? And I was like, if you notice now, the renovated homes are actually going and selling and are pending in the 730 price point, 740 price point, not 780 or 790. That was literally a month, 2 months ago, right? And then the story unfolds, which is what you guys are talking about, statistic, right? I don't have to make up anything. I just use the stats to my advantage, but I'm educating my client how I came up with those, because to them, it might make no sense if I don't explain it, because they were like, wait a minute, Randy, there was a house right on the street, because there was a house that was right on the street that sold for 780 renovated. I'm like, and then I educated them with Brian, and we're like, so anyway, so then we went through a whole scenario. Look, an investor buyer, which we're going to bring, because we have a lot of relationships with investors, we're going to bring those investors through this property before we go on the market, so we can at least gauge the market, right? And see. However, I was like, before we do that, let me explain how investors are thinking today, right? And I explained, it's no longer 780 after repair value, as we call it in the investor world, ARV, right? It's now they're using about 730 for your property if it was renovated, right? However, construction costs went up than what the typical would have been 2 years ago, right? So now, instead of maybe spending 50,000 or 60 or 70, now they're looking at 100, 110. Like, it's ridiculous how much more they have to allocate for that. I was like, second, and the third, I was like, a lot of the investors that we work with, they do volume. They do 60, 70, 80 a year. They are now stuck with inventory, right? They have 30 properties on the books, and what they're trying to do is unload those properties. So anything new that comes their way, they're not going to say no. They're going to look at it, right? That's what they're in business for. They don't stop buying, but they're going to be very, very conservative. And I don't want you to get offended, right? This is just the way that they have to navigate through what they're dealing with, right? So I was like, we're going to try to bring buyers in here like that do multiple a month, but I'm also going to look for ones that are doing maybe 1 or 2 deals a year, which they have a little bit more room to play with because they don't have stress because they have all this inventory they're sitting on. That one might pay a little more, right? I was like, but the ones we can really count on that for sure will close are the ones that do volume. So sure enough, we brought in a couple, and and then I said, one thing I added, I was like, look, so if today's value with the new comparables after the market shifted beginning of June is now 730, let's just say, what the investor is going to do on top of that, because we don't know, let's say they buy a house in a month, and then they're going to use about a 6-month hold time instead of a 3-month hold time that they used to use in the seller's market, right? So now their holding time is now extended to 6 months instead of 3 months. So now they have additional holding costs. They borrow money. They don't use their own cash. They pay interest on that money, right? I was like, so what? And then on top of it, they're going to use the statistical trends of what the market is doing. And if it's declining, like it is in certain parts, they're going to have to assume that might happen continually over the next 6 months. So they're going to take an additional probably 10% off the 730 and actually use that as their number once the house is renovated. So that will bring your house down to about 600 and whatever, 70, 80,000 that they will use in the future when they're finished renovating this property and putting it on the market, assuming the market is going to continue to decline the way it is. They have to be very conservative, and they are risk averse, right? They have to navigate that way. So I'm just educating them. So that way, when they got an offer at 470,000, which that's what happened, they were not insulted, right? Because it could have easily blown up in our face for Brian and I, and this client could have been like, that's ridiculous, right? 470,000. There was a house that sold for 780 on the block, renovated. That's a $300,000 spread. They are robbing me. Like, it could have easily been that reaction, right? But because we educated them and showed them literally how that comes down to where they literally will make 50, 60,000, if all goes perfect, now it made more sense. And they were like, hey, I trust you, Brian. I trust you, Randy. Let's move forward with, once we get the approval from the court, then let's talk to the neighbor across the street, seeing if they're interested, because they showed some interest. I was like, perfect. They'll pay more than this flipper. I know that if they are approved for a loan. And if that doesn't work, let's list it, because we'll get you more money that way, because there is no pressure. You don't need to sell this thing right away, right? And they were like, hey, you know what? We love all these options. We love your transparency and how you're educating us, right? Brian, you want to add something to that?
No, I think what you said, Randy, is there was a lot of nuggets all through there that you could use, but the most important part of it is buyers and sellers haven't changed since time began with buying and selling houses. The buyers today still want the nicest home in the best area for the least amount of money, for the least amount of fees. They want the seller to do everything and fix it, and they just want a really good deal. And sellers just want a really good buyer that'll pay the highest price with the least amount of fees to the seller. And that's always going to be the expectation of either client going into a market, regardless of what the market's doing. Buyers want a great deal, and they get a lot of influence from outside sources. So you have to be able to manage those expectations. And in this case, we have a seller who had the expectations, and they've got some, they got a reverse mortgage on there. They have a hero loan program on there. They got a lot of negatives they inherited in this property, not to mention it wasn't even in a trust, which it should have been. So they have to go through a Hedgestead Act. Google that. And so we educated ourselves on all this going into this. And I think that's the key, the message here that Randy was sharing is that you can't just go into every listing presentation with comps. You've really got to go in with solutions, regardless of what you're doing on either side of the thing.
Yeah. And I'll finish on this, Mitch, and is Kevin, who's always on these masterminds, which is awesome. He's one of our agents on the team. He's an investor as well. And he now has 3 flips that are listed right here in San Diego for him and his dad. And one of the ones that he's got, when they bought these, the market was still hot. It was literally still like beginning of May, right? And then everything changed. But they listed this one property in University Heights. And what we learned right away was that, in that area, most houses have small yards. However, those yards are tricked out, right? Because that whole area is all about walkability, but also when you come home, if you're a young couple, you still want to have a cool little yard, even if it's small, to hang out, right? So we decided, after consulting one another and talking through this process, because I'm co-listing this property with Kevin to help him, we got on a conference call with their contractor, myself, Kevin, and his dad, and we decided that it's probably a better idea to take the house off the market, make some improvements to the yard, right? And then put it back, take new photos and put it back on the market instead of dropping the price by 100,000 or 50, which you have to in $1 million markets, right? Because $10,000 isn't going to do it, right? So instead of dropping the price by that much, we believed it was a better decision to actually invest maybe $5,000 to improve the yard and trick it out better, that you didn't have to do 3 months ago. Like that, there wasn't even a thought, like, we'll just, whatever, we'll just, cut the grass, and as long as it's not, we don't show weeds, like it's fine, right? Or if, literally, if anything's sold. Well, things are not like that. So with our investor clients, instead of just making a quick reactive decision, dropping the price by so much, I believe it's better to actually take the risk of investing maybe a few grand, improve the areas that are being brought up in the feedback, and then go back on the market at the same exact price. You don't even have to lower the price, right? Because again, we do have comps that support it. And then if you offer the interest rate credits, things like that, you get creative. Now you solve the number one problem and not focus only on just price dropping by 50, 100,000, right? Because to the investor, that literally wipes up all the profit, period. So let's give ourselves at least a chance to at least maybe make some money or at least break even, right? Instead of just basically saying like, I throwing in the towel and giving up, right? By dropping the price. So those are some of the things we're doing with some of the investors. Like we're revisiting their properties and making decisions if maybe we should go back and change some stuff.
That's interesting is, I just listed a property 2 weeks ago and it was in the middle of the shift. So it was impossible to really comp. And so now I have to go back and deal with that, which I'll talk about in a minute. Kim, what do you got?
Yeah, good morning, guys. How are you guys?
Good.
I got my Italian styling here. He's setting up the new studio, so excuse him. But hope everyone's doing good. Brian, that was next level. Brian's always next level, but really this morning he took the reins and everything he said was spot on. Jana, so happy to see you. Welcome to the group. That's exciting. Couple things I just want to go through with you guys. Obviously, your energy, what you bring to the table, how you interact with your clients, the energy, your tone, they feed off that. If you're sounding nervous, they know that. If you're sitting there shaking on front of them, they feel that, they see that. Not literally, you guys, but you know what I mean. You know, what you're presenting to them is very important. And what I have found, the best way I can control my emotions and be able to approach all these situations with confidence and being the leader is knowing the market. I think Randy, you talked about that, or Dennis maybe, be the market expert. If you don't know how many homes came on the market today or how many sold today and how many are price reduced today, you need to open up your MLS right now or after the class, look at those numbers, write them down, because that's extremely important. That's just the very basics, but you need to know your numbers every single day. And that gives you confidence. When you run into someone and they ask, how's the real estate market? Oh, well, you know, there's 400 homes that came on the market today, 400 web pending. We had over 500 price reductions. It looks like prices are reducing down here, and it's easy to go with it when you know the numbers. Number two is managing expectations. You guys already went through this, but you need to set exactly your buyer's expectations from day zero. The buyer's consultation is extremely important, making sure that they realize we are in a changing market and some sellers might not be willing to negotiate like other sellers. So we might be able to put in a good offer, and some seller, like we had just the other day, just said no. And then we have another seller with the next buyer, that same buyer, the next offer we put in, it was listed at $749. We submitted an offer at $620. We ended up at $645. They reduced their price $100,000 because showing the listing agent the statistics. Hey, there's nothing else in this market that's going to sell over 700. Yeah, you guys have the best house, but you could be sitting on this for 7 years. Do you want to be sitting on this home for 7 years? And, over a few days, they have decided that, they're going to let us get it. So setting up your clients or setting up your buyers from day zero to make sure they understand. Some sellers aren't, they're just not realistic yet, and that's okay. And then knowing that others, are willing to move, and you got to find the motivated sellers. And then obviously with that buyer consultation, go over all the potential problems. I don't know who it was, and I apologize. That was said, make a list. I think it was Brian. Make a list of your last 10 transactions and all of the challenges and all of the issues that popped up. And you can pre-warn your clients this. And then when it does pop up, it's no big deal. It's like, it can actually be a huge deal, but because you have prepared them, when it happens, they go, oh yeah, you told us about that. You got it handled. Yep, we got it handled. And we're just moving forward in the way that we should be going because you have set their expectations properly for the things that, they possibly could encounter. Now with this changing market, don't let buyers that are not serious, ready, willing, and able buyers abuse you, because you will find buyers that, especially as this market comes down, they're going to start just kind of being absolutely unrealistic because they're trying to get that great deal. And as much as I want to help everybody get a great deal, we still have sellers that are trying to at least break even if they've recently bought it, or they're still trying to preserve their equity. They're not just, throwing in the towel quite yet. Like Randy was saying, they're not just throwing in the towel right yet, but it's definitely coming. So, or at least we feel like it could be coming down here. Always make sure that your buyers understand what you're going through. When you talk to them or you educate them, always finish it with, does that make sense? Or do you understand? And I always like to say that right after that, before I let them answer, I say, because if it doesn't, I'm always happy to go through it again with you guys. It's no big deal. Most of my time, I have to go through it a couple times because I talk fast. And of course I blame it on myself, not them not paying attention, but I talk fast. I'm like, I'm go. But I need to make sure you understand what we're going on, what's going on, what's happening. And that way you can make the best decision for you and your family, and I can help you do that. And then, like I said, the sellers. Now, for my seller clients, we are getting really serious because we have a lot of listings that are getting 0 showings. we priced them, Mitch, like you said, as the market was still, we had our CMA tools simply didn't work. They were outpriced. We were kind of just making up numbers and they would sell and everyone was happy. That's not happening anymore. We're going back to using our CMA tools that really are efficient. With that said, sometimes they're not even there because we just are getting no showing. So we need to tell, or at least I am telling all of my sellers right now, guys, we need to be the best priced property on the market if we want to sell, or we need to reevaluate our goals and our plans. And do we want to sell right now? Or is it okay for us to wait 5 or 7 years, which is usually the market cycle? Not saying that it will be this time, but that is on average based on previous history. Do you want to be in this home 5 to 7 years from now? If they say yes, then you have to let them decide if they really want to sell or not. If they say no, you say, okay, well, that 40,000 that we're losing now, or that 60,000 or 80,000, if we wait another 90 days, that's going to be 100, that's going to be 120, that's going to be 150. We are in a downtrending market, you guys. And then when you show them that, explain it to them, they can grasp it. And then again, does that make sense? Do you understand that? Because I can go through it again, but again, you're always reaffirming, confirming with them that they get it. Jan, I think you brought this up, that interest rates are going up, but they're still historically low. Thank God, that's wonderful. We can still, finance. We aren't seeing the price reductions down here in Southwest Florida come down quite as quickly as we see interest rates going up. Now, I think that's going to take some time to adjust, but we also don't know how long they're going to keep raising interest rates, right? So that just because they raise them another 3/4 yesterday, basis points, in a week, they could do it another 3/4 and another, and the Fed, we all know you don't fight the Fed. That's just rules of life. And they're going to keep going until they feel like they have control of this. So we need to prepare our sellers that we don't want to fight the Fed, right? We need to prepare them that if they need to sell and they want to sell, and we want to get them to wherever their dreams are. Bring back that motivation, you guys. One thing that a lot of us have forgotten is the pre-qual script. Where are you moving? When you sell this home, where would you be moving next? What's taking you there? Those questions are so important when it comes to pricing homes properly and aggressively, because you can use them to like Mitch was saying, you can use them. You're not taking advantage of them, but you're educating them. You're helping them reach their goals, but you're being the professional. You're being the expert and allowing them to see what's really going on with the market. We know there's all kinds of fear. There's all kinds of uncertainty. The internet's full of lies. So they need an expert that knows their numbers. They know their statistics. And they can talk to them as a professional with the proper energy, the proper, let's call it a vibe, right, you guys? Right? We like the vibe. You got to have a vibe for them that they grasp it, they understand it, and then they're willing to work with you to accomplish their goal. Because a lot of people just simply, they'll throw in the towel and say, oh, I'm not getting 100, 200 grand on my home anymore. Remind them of their goals, remind them that they're still preserving their equity by selling now. Even if they do sell at a less price, it's significantly more than they'll get in 90 days or 100 days if we continue on the market, the trend that we're on. So that's what I'm telling people. Once one person asked if they have a seller that says we're just going to wait. That is obviously one of the biggest objection handlers, or actually that is that's not an objection handler. That is a whatever you want to call it. I'm drawing a blank here, guys. But if they are going to wait, you can't force people to sell. That's not an objection. Come on, you guys all know what it is. Shit, we've been doing this years, but they're not ready to sell. They don't have the motivation to sell, and we can't force people to sell your home. Now, we can explain to them that, re-motivate them, re-explain to them why they wanted to sell in the first place. See if that, with everything going on in the market, is that still what you want to do? I have found 8 out of 10 sellers that give me that objection handler of, we just are going to wait. We're not going to do it. After you show them that you can get them the absolute top market value, even though it's maybe less than what they're asking, but you're going to do the best you can, and you're going to show them, and you're going to show all the results, and you're going to be the man. I have found that a lot of my sellers do come around. It is a process though. So that's one of those objection handlers that you might not be able to always overcome.
Good stuff, Cam, as always. And it's funny. So, and we'll talk a little bit for a few minutes about some of those points that, a lot of people, first of all, anybody that bought their home 3 years ago or more has great equity in their home right now. So it's not like when we had the crash of 08 when nobody had equity because everybody did 100% financing. Anybody that bought the things have gone up. I mean, my house in 24 months ago was $375,000 at 700 today. So if I went and got and sold it for 6, I still did pretty darn good, right? So you have the greed factor. But one of the things I always educate my customers on in this type of market is chasing the market down. I know I said that earlier, but I want to explain it. And I'll give you the example. I had a customer, this is going back to the last crash. House is worth $500,000. I'm not going to list it for less than $550,000. Okay. And we didn't know how to really deal with this at this point because it was first time I've been through a major crash as a realtor. And so anyway, so I said, look, it's not worth more than 500. The market's going down. You need to be aggressive. No, I'm not doing less than 500. So a month later, he's like, all right, we're not going to show, let's lower it to 500. I go, well, it's 450 now. And by the time we sold the house, we sold it at $300,000. Because every time he'd be willing to have a conversation about a price reduction, he just kept chasing the market down and down and down. And I use that in my listing presentations. And it's something to be thinking about now when you're listing, but the market is going to go down in some areas more than others. You know, I don't think we're gonna have a huge thing here because of the Space Center where we are in Cocoa Beach. But, you know, a lot of markets are going to start seeing it, maybe 10, 15, 20% correction if interest rates rise a little bit more, right? So that's so you understand what chasing the market means. The other thing is this happened now when you're talking setting expectations for your sellers. You know, in our market, again, I can't talk about other markets, but in our market, 35% of our buyers are all cash. Now, what's going to happen is that 65% people who are financing, that is going to go down. So your pool of buyers is going to go down. All right, and I'll give you an example of a conversation I had yesterday. 1925 home, which by the way, in our area is really old. There's very few homes in the 20s in our area. The old homes, like my home's in 1961, that's considered a really old home here. And we listed the house 50,000 below market. So the market value in my comps was 7.25. This is right when everything was shifting. So we didn't really know. It was a guess. And I said, the market's shifting. They said, well, we're good with 675. So we got a few lists. We got a few people. And the challenge is too, is they paid 340 for it 18 months ago. So you have the consumer looking at the page. Every feedback is it's too high. It comps out. It still comps out actually. But they look on Zillow, see his estimate for, you know, 550 or 475, whatever it is. I've got two offers so far. One was 425, one was 475, which they're not even, you know, going to even entertain. So here's how I explained it to him. I thought it was actually, I made it up off the top of my head, but it was pretty good. That's when you're the winged salesperson, right? I wish I was systemizing some of you guys, because I'm like, just figure out the answer and come out of my mouth. But anyway, I said, look, you know, out of 1,000 buyers, you're looking for someone that's pretty much going to want to pay cash, right? And you're looking for someone that wants a 1925 home in an area where the old homes are 1960s. So you've got to now say that you're looking very, very specific buyer. So the number is probably 25 people out of 1,000 buyers are going to be interested in your home. So our pool of buyers is very, very low. So when you're getting a very specific, unique type of home, you have to set that, right? And so that was a really interesting. So they lowered the price from 675 to 650 right away. And we're prepared in 2 more weeks to go down to 6.25. And we do it. We're in 25,000 every 2 weeks up to 600. They'll go as low as 600. Now again, this is where greed comes in. Remember, they bought the house for 340 18 months ago, but they don't want less than 6, right? I will get them there because they're going to have to go there if they want to sell their house. The other thing that when I talk to sellers is I think is really important in this market is if they're really motivated, like everybody said, if they're not really motivated, then it's not relevant, right? Let's see what happens. That type of let's see what happened customer is not relevant. But the people have to sell their home, I say, look, let's price the home 5% below market. And then it'll sell really quickly. Because again, we don't want to get into a chasing the market thing. The more price reductions you do, the harder it is to sell your property, right? And I want to give you a couple of other things I use on using expectations. You know, a lot of you may know I teach a class on expectations. All your disappointment in life are based on your expectations of others. So when I started trying to figure out how do I apply it to my real estate business, I applied it to my wife, to my kids, to all my agents that have worked for me over the years. I said, look, if your expectations are here and my expectations are there for you, I'll never change. So I'll work with your expectations. So one of the things I tell my buyers all the time, look, there's going to be somewhere between 40 and 60 things wrong with this house. We do inspections all the time. And there's going to be 40 to 60 things wrong with this house. So when the inspections come back with 20 things wrong, they're like, oh, not too bad. I tell the seller the exact same thing. When you get this, they're going to find 40 or 50 things wrong, and they might want them all fixed, right? And then even if it's an as-is concept, they might want them all fixed. So when they come back and they only want a couple things fixed, like, oh, not a big deal, I'll fix it. But if I don't set that expectation, it comes back with 20 or 25 things wrong with the property. Now they're like, oh, look at this house is a mess. I have not lost a house to inspections in the last 10 years. because I do that with every single person I do. And especially with the sellers, I've never had a problem with sellers fixing things. And I'll give you an example. I have, I don't sell much anymore. I try not to. But I have 2 listings. I have one's under contract, and told my seller, it's a good friend of mine, I said, look, there's probably plumbing issues with this, probably electrical issues with this. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff wrong. And I taught my agent who's on the other side of the transaction, I told her exactly how to prepare the buyer. And they came back and asked for one $500 thing to be fixed. So my seller's like, yeah, no problem, let's get it done. And the buyer's like, oh my God, this wasn't that bad. So set those expectations for people. We've got 15 minutes left, so I want to take a minute here, because a lot of our agents are new agents. They've never gone through something like this. And I want to just run through all of us real quick. And what's the best advice you get, not on a listing, and maybe even this is a mindset conversation, I'm not sure, but we've all been through, I don't know all you guys, but I know most of us here have been through. I mean, Kim, you were 14 when we went through the last crash, right? Sorry, I can't help it. But what advice would you give our agents right now that are going through this and not sure from a mindset standpoint how to handle this? And Dennis, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've been doing this for quite some time. This market's awesome. I mean, I'm super excited, really. Like, I can't be more excited about this market we're going into than ever, honestly. So, you know, we're all talking strategies about a declining market. Don't let that scare you. Honestly, be excited about this market. This is an easy market to navigate if you have skills. Okay. So you need skills like we're talking about here, how to talk to sellers, how to talk to buyers. Really hone your skills and you'll succeed in this market. It's a great market. You know, my good friend and my personal coach, Brian Moses, he always gives me an example, and it's pretty basic, but you know, I'll ask you guys. So what's more important in real estate sales? Is it motivation or skills? And a lot of people say motivation, right? No, you got to be motivated, go, you know, but and he always gives the example. He goes, okay. He goes, so let me ask you a question. If you're on an airplane and a pilot dies of a heart attack, and there's somebody else that super motivated to fly the plane to land all these people down on the ground, or there's somebody else there that has some skills about flying an airplane that's not super motivated, which one do you want behind the wheel? You want the guy who knows who has the skills, right? Forget about motivation. So, you know, motivation's important, but really, guys, get your skills down. And that's going to seminars, coming to these masterminds are massive. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years. I'm learning stuff every week. So, you know, get your skills really, really, really good. Be skilled, and you're going to succeed awesomely in this market. This is a great market we're going into. I'm pumped. You just have to know how to talk to buyers and sellers. That's all. Really, it's not
100%. Craig.
The biggest thing comes down is your own attitude. If you're walking around like Eeyore, oh me, oh my, well, it's going to shine around you. Your passion, your abilities, your outlook on things is what's going to carry the people around you. If you want to deal with Eeyores, be an Eeyore. You know, that's where your clients are going to be. Because events are going to happen. The perception plus the perception of what's happening is going to give us an outcome. Deal with the events. Give the perception that you understand through the skills that you've learned and you've understood. And like Dennis has done, get a mentor. Listen to more masterminds. If you're in AXB with any of us, go into the world and get more classes with icons that are dealing with this stuff. But the biggest thing that you can do is have your skills honed, have your attitude inside good, because it'll reflect on everybody else. If you're going around like the world's coming to an end, who wants to deal with people going to an end? I don't. And also pretend, even if you don't have the money, pretend like you're negotiating that you have $100,000 or you have 6 months of reserves behind you, because your clients can smell the blood in the water. If they feel that you're pushing because it's about you and not them, they will ultimately go the other way. Don't let the blood be in the water. You will lose negotiations every time. So
that's probably, honestly, Craig, I mean, you always have amazing points, but that is such an important point, that when people are desperate, they fail. And so even if you're feeling it, you've got to somehow, you know, I always said I was pretty desperate when I got into real estate, and I put on my happy face and my positivity face. And I just, you cannot let your outside world interfere with your inside real estate world, right? You have to let that bounce off you and change people, or you'll die.
Coach Gabe just said it, commission breath. Stop
exactly.
bleeding on people, you know what I mean?
Terrible, yeah,
I mean,
terrible.
it literally is.
Yep.
And it hurts. Trust me, it hurts. They say fake it till you make it. Well, you could be also fake it till you're broke too.
Yep,
So
exactly.
there's a lot of people selling a lot of real estate. When you really think about it, net zero. Their ego's huge, their volume's huge, but their net profit is crap. So the bottom line is not what you sell, it's what you're keeping right now. So look at that. Go in and cut 25% of all your expenses right now. Go to all your vendors and try to negotiate 10% down right now. So I know I went on a tangent there, Mitch, but just doing something that I'm doing right now.
It's all good. We got about 7 more minutes here to get through a few guys. Jana, go ahead.
So talking about commissions and how you come across to the people that you're presenting your professionalism to, one thing I always do, I never look at my commissions. I never look at what my check is. It goes automatically into my account. Any title company, when I go to closing, better not hand me a check. I don't want to have my money at the table. I want the client to completely be all about them. And I go through that with my everyday with my clients. I don't care if it's a first time home buyer or a higher end client. I treat them all the same and I act the same. So that keeps me really leveled out as far as how I come across. It's all about them at all times. And then the other tip that I have that's really important is your photography. And so when we're talking about making changes and we're talking about price reductions and things like that, I'll give you an example of something that just came up recently. We had a ranch on the market for over 2 years for $3.5 million. Then the guys that do land and ranch that I'm affiliated with, they decided to hire a professional photography company, and they came in and spent a bunch of money and got the end product, and that still wasn't very satisfying. So they were like, okay, we're tired of this. We're going to go out and learn it ourselves. They got a drone and learned photography and went out and brought horses and families and made you feel something when you looked at the ranch. And they put it up on the market at $5 million and sold it in 30 days. So when you're looking at property and you're presenting your listings and things, the first thing to not do is to say, we're going to start reducing the price. I think you need to look at what your presentation is and how you're making people feel when they're looking at that property.
So true. Exactly. It's
absolutely. Randy, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just want to second that. It's what I, with the investors, I was saying, like, they're quick to potentially make that drop, but, and because, I mean, they have a lot of money on the line when I work with investors. So they feel like maybe that, it's like, I don't want to keep chasing the market, but the reality is sometimes we just do that, what you just described, Jana, and you'll be surprised that you might end up getting the same price or more that you were hoping before you were thinking about dropping the price. And that's an amazing example. Wow.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add, Randy, before we go to Kim?
No, go ahead.
Kim?
Jana, that was great. I love that. That was really, really good. Craig, I love your new office, by the way. Looks really good. I think for new agents, what I'm telling them, and when we're uncertain about a market, right? It's always a good market for somebody. If it's a buyer's market, go find buyers. If it's a seller's market, like it's been the last 2 years, try to find sellers. It's not impossible. We're all doing it. Everybody's doing it. Put your nose down, get to work, use the training that we're giving you. If you have one of Mitch's live trainings in person, I just went to one the other day. It was absolutely fantastic. Check those out. Educate yourself. When you educate yourself, you become the expert. Then you have your confidence and you can show that to people. You bring that as the expert, and then they trust you and they go with what you say. And that allows you to price it properly. It allows you to reduce it when needed. And that is what people are looking for. So know your numbers, know your statistics. Remember that it's always a good market for somebody. So your job is to help those type of people. If that's where you are in your career and you're still looking just for deals, target deals that if it's a buyer's market, target buyers. If it's a seller's market, target sellers. Simple, right?
It's really simple. And so, and I'll wrap this up. Jenna, someone asked if you were willing to share the video in there of that.
Oh, yeah, I can get that. I'll have to get it, but
okay.
Absolutely. And so they brought in live horses and children and families and made a whole different environment on the property.
Yeah,
up the
I love
price
that too.
and it sold. So that's just kind of a really good story that caught me. And I thought, yeah, pictures are
And,
words.
Jenna,
Yeah.
that reminded me of a flip that we did at this $1 million home years ago. And we did a broker open house, and we actually brought in, they had a tennis court. So we brought in tennis players, and they were playing tennis while we were having fun and showing the property. We brought in live music, like a DJ, because they had an awesome view and awesome backyard. It reminds me of that property, man. And it was all about creating that emotion, right? Where they could be like excited for their own client to go and look through this house, you know?
Absolutely. Cool stuff. All right, let's finish this up. So real quick from me, new agents. This is actually the best market coming up for you. Inventory, you have it now. Buyers don't have to bid $250 billion over asking price anymore. Most new agents are buyers agents to start, right? This is your best opportunity. When the market shifted last time, we were a typical brokerage. We did listings like everybody else. And then we had 6 months that 100 listings didn't sell. And I told my agents, we are not taking another listing unless they're 5% below market. So we literally went from 100 listings to almost no listings, but built our database, of buyers. And so when brokerages were going out of business and realtors were going out of business, all my agents were growing 20% a year because we made a shift the way we think. So we are shifting a little bit here from a seller's market to a buyer's market. It's a great time to sell still, if you're priced correctly. You have a ton of equity in your property, but it's a phenomenal time to buy because you're going to save 20%, which you would have been paying over the price a month ago, right? 99% of this is attitude, positivity. I'm a big positivity guy, always smiling, always happy, right? Always, the world is always full. This half empty crap. What is that crap? You've got to go out there with a positive attitude and a positive message to your customers. If you do that, you will rock. So anyways, our time's up right at 1 o'clock. Thanks everybody for being here. Love all you guys. We'll talk to you all soon. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
guys.
me.
See you guys.